The Metroid franchise turns 35 years old this year, and to celebrate, Nintendo is releasing a brand new 2D Metroid game called Metroid Dread this fall for Nintendo Switch, much to the celebration of Metroid fans everywhere. Like me, that's me, I'm celebrating. And while the series never quite reached the popularity and sales numbers of iconic Nintendo franchises like Super Mario and The Legend of Zelda, hardcore Nintendo fans know that Samus's intergalactic bounty hunting adventures across various gross and dreary planets have resulted in some of the best video games ever made. Straight up. But much like the depths of Zeebs, strange and ominous secrets are lurking in the shadows of the Metroid series, so here are 7 things you probably didn't know about Metroid. There are a ton of parallels between Metroid and the first Alien film: resilient female protagonists, haunting, derelict environments set in desolate corners of space, terrifying creatures that latch onto some part of your head, maternal themes through queens and mothers, all that fun stuff. The development team behind the original Metroid was never really shy about the inspiration it took from the 1979 classic Sigourney Weaver sci-fi film, but a detail you might not have put together is Ridley, the frequently menacing monster who fought Samus in several Metroid games, is named after acclaimed director Ridley Scott, the guy who directed Alien. Yes, Ridley, the hulking purple space dragon that Smash Bros. Creator Masahiro Sakurai once deemed too big of a character to add to Super Smash Bros. Before ultimately adding to Super Smash Bros., carries that name as a nod to Ridley Scott. To make the connection to Scott's work even clearer, the original art and design of Ridley, as found in Metroid for NES's accompanying game manual, depicts Ridley as a darker, more sinister creature, complete with claws, big feet, and a long, pointy tail. You know, kinda like the Xenomorph from Alien. The Nintendo Wii U's Virtual Console gave a whole new generation of Nintendo fans, or at least the ones that bought a Wii U, a chance to revisit tons of classic Nintendo titles through the eShop, a digital storefront for games. Paired with Miiverse, a message board-style discussion platform built into the Wii U, which allowed players to chat about specific games they were playing, or share screenshots of levels they were stuck on to ask for help, classic games like Metroid were connecting with audiences in amazing new ways. Now, one of the most memorable and memed was a post in 2016 featuring a screenshot of Samus standing in front of a tunnel in Super Metroid with the infamous caption, "Why can't Metroid crawl?" Okay, so putting aside the hilarity of assuming the hero of Metroid is named Metroid, a mistake usually relegated to Zelda, who is not the hero of Zelda, the player obviously hadn't unlocked Samus's Morph Ball power-up yet, which allowed her to roll into ball form and access tight corridors throughout the game, a series staple at this point. But weirdly enough, there actually is a technical reason why Metroid, or Samus, can't crawl. You see, the Morph Ball in the original NES game was designed because the developers couldn't figure out how to make Samus and her hulking spacesuit animate properly when she attempted to crawl through tunnels. The limited power and pixel count of the NES meant the team had to find a solution, so the Morph Ball was born. So see, the Miiverse post from 2016 asking why Metroid can't crawl, it's not so funny now, is it? Haha! No, it's actually still very funny. That's a very funny thing. Objectively hilarious to be like, why can't Metroid crawl? Nintendo protagonists are rarely known for having a lot to say. Mario utters a few vaguely Italian catchphrases as he hops around the Mushroom Kingdom. Link usually says, "Yeah!" while fighting his way across Hyrule. And for the longest time, Samus spoke even less than they did. Which makes it odd that Jennifer Hale, one of the most iconic voice actors in video game and animation history, lent her voice talents to Samus for Metroid Prime, only to have the overwhelming majority of her work cut before the full game was released in 2002. You can still hear her version of Samus breathing and grunting as she traverses the game and battles hordes of gnarly space monsters, but Hale originally also voiced an entire narrated intro that explained the backstory behind the Metroid series leading up to Prime. Now, this intro was cut, but still remained buried on retail copies of the disc, which fans eventually found by ripping the game and digging through its source files. The entire scrapped intro has thankfully been preserved since then.
After discovering a possible pirate colony on planet Talon 4, Samus has again prepared for war, hoping to end the pirate threat forever.
There are a lot of references to types of family members in Metroid. There's a mother brain and that weird meme from Other M where Samus says, "A baby." But the series never really gets into the history behind the family of Samus herself, as she's almost always depicted as a loner fighting against evil on her own. She never really goes home for dinner or calls her parents from her spaceship. The biggest reason for that is probably because that would be really weird, but also because Samus's parents are sadly deceased. That's right, Samus has parents, and their names are Rodney and Virginia. Wait, what? According to the Metroid manga, Rodney and Virginia Aaron raised Samus on the human colony of K2L before ultimately dying when Ridley attacked the colony. There are even unlockable images in the Japanese version of Metroid Fusion that depict Samus' mother shielding her while her father blasts his gun at Ridley in the last moments of their lives. Side note, but Rodney and Virginia sound less like the parents of an intergalactic bounty hunter and more like the names of two people that a morning news channel would interview in a segment about raising gas prices.
And thanks for stopping by.
But mainly, stay classy.
But still, their addition does bring some significant weight to Samus' perpetual crusade to finally kill Ridley once and for all. It's personal. Rest in peace, Rodney and Virginia. After a failed attempt to make a sequel to Super Metroid on the N64 with the announced but subsequently cancelled Metroid 64, things seemed a bit uncertain for the future of the series. A few years later, North American developers Retro Studios were toiling around with a couple of new game ideas under Nintendo's funding, one of which was a third-person action game starring several female heroes. Upon seeing the concept, Shigeru Miyamoto, creator of Super Mario, Donkey Kong, and more, suggested that Retro turn the idea into a first-person Metroid game. Additionally, Miyamoto helped inspire some of Samus' arsenal in Prime by suggesting to the sound designers that they should create interesting and amazing sounds, which would then inspire the artists to design weapons based on those sound effects. That's a very non-traditional design process to be sure, but you don't become the most iconic video game developer of all time by taking the easy road. While Metroid in first person was a hit, Metroid Fusion launched on Game Boy Advance the very same week as the first Metroid Prime, and players were equally ecstatic to revisit Samus' 2D roots. The gorgeous pixel art side-scrolling platformers felt right at home in the GBA, where countless other Nintendo franchises had also been thriving in a return to their 16-bit roots. Now, one of those franchises was the Wario series, which sort of split into two directions in the GBA. One was WarioWare, the fast-paced minigame collection, which featured a collection of NES-themed minigames, one of which dedicated to Metroid, while the other was Wario Land, the clunkier, meaner cousin to the Super Mario Land games, which originated on the first Game Boy. So where am I going with this? Well, listen, a few years after Metroid Fusion launched, modders had already ripped the game and gotten it running well in emulators, using cheat codes and hacks to enter secret debug rooms that were never meant to be seen by the public. Metroid actually has a weird history of that. Inside those rooms, they found Samus running and jumping over a series of cartoonish rock textures that definitely weren't part of the Metroid Fusion art style. And that's because they're leftover placeholder blocks from Wario Land 4, indicating that Metroid Fusion was seemingly developed in the same engine as Wario Land. The games even share a few of the same developers. Now, is there any other old Wario stuff hidden in Fusion? Well, some people say, if you listen very closely while Samus is riding in one of the game's dark and foreboding elevators, you can actually hear a very tiny echo of one of Wario's signature farts. That's absolutely not true. I made that up. Why would that be true at all? I'm sorry I said that. I thought it was funny. You're probably mad at me. There's no farts in that game, as far as I know. And finally, while Samus is known for being solitary and reclusive, it's important to note that every now and then she likes to kick back with some friends and jam out in her band, where she plays the cello. What? Okay, so it's impossible to determine whether or not this appearance is canon. It's definitely not, but it's still so much fun. In the NES version of the hit block-dropping game Tetris, players who complete the Type B mode are greeted with a small ending where several Nintendo characters all play musical instruments together, including Samus rocking on the cello and more weird Nintendo guys doing Nintendo stuff. It's kind of like Smash Brothers, but incredibly bizarre. And if you're wondering how Samus got back home after the show, maybe she hitched a ride on the various pieces of Russian architecture blasting off into space. And those were just a few strange, cool, and funny things you probably didn't know about Metroid. Did you know them all already? Well, then leave a comment below and tell us something cool that you know about the Metroid series. Personally, I'm just incredibly happy that we're getting a new Metroid game this year, and hopefully getting Metroid Prime 4 in the not too distant future, because I love having an excuse to talk about Metroid. Not like I needed one, because Metroid kicks ass. But anyway, for all things Samus, Ridley, Kraid, Motherbrain, Brinstar, and the Space Pirates, and not that Metroid soccer game that we do not talk about, keep it locked right here on IGN.